you. It's our tips and tricks program, and we have a bunch of volunteers to give a series of short presentations on little pearls that they think y'all might benefit. So our first gentleman up tonight is John Burke. Yeah. So John, why don't you do your thing and do what you're going to do.
How many have ever turned a bowl and gone through the bottom of it? I mean, it's something we all do. Can you see that? The problem I have is that I use mortise tenons most of the time. I insert the chuck into the bottom rather than grabbing on an external tenon. And when you do that, you don't know where these jaws are. They're sitting inside depending on how deep you cut this tenon. And so I'm never really sure, obviously, where that bottom is. So I came up with this idea. I built a little jig. I put 2 magnets in it, and it fits on the lathe. And I had to put a little booklet here because I made this so it will fit perfectly on a Powermatic and be level. I take a square and I put it on the jaws of the chuck. And I put this jig right smack on the edge of the bottom of this square. And then I put a piece of tape on there so I don't have to do this every time. I can pick this thing up and put it away, and next time I try to figure out where the bowl is, I have this piece of tape on here that sets where that is. So then I put a bowl in. And I crank it down. And I don't know how my calipers, my finger calipers don't work well on this bowl because I don't have a rim that's the same as the bottom. So I really don't know where the bottom of this is in regard to the chuck. So I go back and I take the square, and now I know that I have this much room from the top of my bowl to the jaws of the chuck. So I can go in and I can measure now what that depth is, and this turns out to be 7/8 of an inch deep. Then I can measure the bottom down here, and I've got 1 1/16 inches. So I know now that I have 3/16 of an inch between the inside and the jaws of my chuck, which will end up being somewhere around the bottom of the bowl. So I got 3/16 of an inch to play with. I can either take it out here, or when I turn it around, I can take it out of the inside and take another 1/16 of an inch out anyway and have 1/8 of an inch thickness in the bottom, and then I won't have that problem. So, any questions on how that's done? One of the other ways that I measure the bowl is I made this jig. Just drilled a hole in a piece of wood, cut a saw, put a nut on it, so I can move this in and out, and I can measure it here. Problem with this is if I look at it this way, I can say I've got some room there, but I don't know where those jaws are. So I can now do another measurement if I want to. So I know that this now went to the bottom, so I can measure this one and find out that it is 7/8 of an inch, and measure this one, and it'll tell me the same thing, that I got 3/16 of an inch on the bottom. So either way works well. I don't like this method when I use an inside or a mortise taper on the or on the or on the chuck to hold it in place. So, any questions? The simple, easy way of doing it. It gets you a real accurate reading on how thick the bottom is. I have one other one. I get an awful lot of questions on how I make a chuck for the shorebirds that are over there. And so I want to just take a minute and show the chuck that I made. Take this one off. I make three pieces. I make a base that is tapped to fit the headstock, so it just screws on. I make another piece that I insert a 1-inch 8 threaded bolt that's 2 inches long, and I countersink that down in, and then I glue that on and end up with an off-center chuck of any offset I want to make it. Let's say I want to make it, this one's 14 millimeters, which is what those were made with. If I put this on and I mark the center, I don't know, can you see that? Mark the center, then go over 14 millimeters, make another mark. Then if I take the tailstock and come in here and put that on the 14 millimeter mark and tighten it there, and glue that in place, I end up with a off-center chuck that's 14 millimeters in diameter. And when I'm done, I can then take my stock and put it on. Bring up the tailstock. And I can turn at 14 millimeters off center. And that's how that's the chuck I made to do those shorebirds. Any questions? Thank you. So that was done on 14 millimeters offset. You start it on center and then go offset to do the offset portion. You see that okay?
First thing I'd like to talk about is bandsaw safety. And one of the big issues in using a bandsaw is trying to saw a cylinder. And what happens is if you progress it into the blade is coming down, it wants to roll that cylinder into the blade. And when that happens, in best case, it's a harrowing experience and you've lost a saw blade. In other cases, you can knock the alignment out, that blade can fly around, and knock you off for all kinds of things. So one way to avoid that is very simply to make a sawing sled. And that consists of a base, a little board here that's going to fit into the T-slot so that you keep it nice and square, and then a piece of wood that's just cut on 45 and then reversed. And even a 2x4 would do it. And I like to put a piece in back because it's easier to get purchased, because you do have to still hold on to that cylindrical part so that it doesn't rotate within your fixture. I also have gotten a scale, and I've marked mine out for inches each way, so if I have repetitive cuts, I could just pop it in there and go real quick. And inexpensive, easy to do. And you can cut these slots on your bandsaw. They don't have to be precision. And this second one is just a little handy thing. If you take a board and just put a bunch of V-cuts in it, and I keep it on a bench and right near the lathe, and I just set my tools on there to keep them from rolling off, so forth. And I also, if I'm doing using multi-gouges, the ones aiming up are sharp, and I just lay it down. That's the guys that got to be resharpened. Just a little way to be organized and make turning a better experience for all of us. Borrow John's little bowl here. The next thing I want to talk about is when you want to undercut a rim. So in this bowl right now it's straight in, but if we wanted to undercut this rim, then we end up in the conventional mode. This back. In the conventional mode with the rotation counterclockwise towards you. Now to get in there, I have to go all the way at here, bend over, see where I am, come in, and then come all the way around. And if you're doing that a lot, you know what's going to happen. It's an awkward position. You're not going to have necessarily the best cut you'd be able to make. So the alternative way, and you'd flip this around, is to reverse it. And just so you're running clockwise, and now your cut is simply like so, right around. So you can stand square, you can see exactly where you're going, and just swing it right around. And much more control, you'll end up with a far better cut. Now one caveat is don't use this chuck. It doesn't have any set screws. Whenever you reverse, always tighten those set screws. Right, Linda? And if you don't, then any pressure on this, you're going to unscrew it, it'll come out, and you have another ugly experience. Whoops. Let's see. I want to talk about scrapers real quickly. And we get a scraper from the factory. It's a positive rake scraper, meaning there's your angle, just like every other tool. And the problem with that, and it's square on the top, the problem with that is that they will tend to self-feed. Now you can get away with it if it's very, very hard wood, very careful, but if you're not, or it's softer wood, you're going to get a lot of tear out, And when it self-feeds, it's going to go in deep. You pull it out, so it'll be all rippled. So the idea of a negative rake on it is you put a secondary bevel on the top. And that one I can illustrate here. So you just grind it like so, upside down, put the negative rake on, and make it, dependent upon how big the your tool is, you want to come back, in this case, a pretty good sized scraper, so it's about 3/16 in. And then your second grind is from the regular side with the top up, wheel coming this way, because all of your cutting is going to be from the top, and you need to have a burr on there. And the other, this then becomes much more forgiving, and you get far better cuts and much less tear out by doing that small thing. It also, I put it on a gouge like this, which I had made, and it's for hollowing. So that also makes it less aggressive when you're in there, less of a chance of cutting through the side or so forth. The only, this one? See the profiles on them. Now the key, when you put a negative rake on there, you have to be between, ideally, between 65 and 70 degrees included angle. So here's my included angle, is the angle between the two sharpenings. Now if you vary from that, you can get to one point, it just won't cut. And so you need to try to get right in that range, and you'll have satisfactory performance and be a whole lot better. Yes, sir. Yeah, it just feeds down. Instead of that, so it feeds down. No, it's not. It doesn't work. Yeah. And I don't know exactly why, but I think it's oh, the question was, why can't you just take a regular scraper, tilt it down, and it just doesn't work. And it will self-feed anyway, but it'll feed down instead of straight in. So, and the last thing I want to talk about is a little item on finishing. Now, when we look at the drying times on a can, you're really looking at a lot of advertising and competition, because this thing dries to the touch in 20 minutes, the recoat in 30 minutes, and it's good to go in 4 hours. And whoever's the quickest one gets their product sold, because you say, wow, I could be through with this just like that. But the reality is that the drying time in those terms of touch and use may not be correct, because what you're concerned about is the curing time. How long does it take this finish to completely cure? And I've never seen a can of paint or finish that says fully cured in X amount of time, because it's a long time. For example, lacquers and varnishes take a minimum of 200 hours, 8+ days at 72 degrees and relatively no humidity. Now, if you look at it, hold humidity constant and bring it down to 50 degrees, it's a month before it actually cures. I don't know what happens on the top side other than burns up on if you go too high. So what you want to do is think about that. And even I've noticed in painting in the house with a white alkaloid water-based paint, they've got all the numbers on use tomorrow. Well, if you paint a shelf, go in there tomorrow and put some stuff on it, if it has any weight, the next time you go to grab it, I see a lot of heads, it won't come off. It's not cured. And so again, you have to, even if it's a water-based alkaloid paint, it's going to take a long time to cure. The faster curing ones would be very thin, very viscous, alcohol, so forth. If it says, clean your brushes with turpentine or mineral spirits, plan ahead and plan plenty of time. So at least 8 days before Christmas. Go for it. That's it, Joel.
Stuff. Most people here know what this is. Some people don't, but it's sandpaper terror. And I've never let anything go, so made it bigger. What this does, sandpaper in. This comes in handy if you're a turner, you use sandpaper. If you're like me, it's my quality, use a lot of sandpaper. And no time at all, you got all the sandpaper you need. This is a hacksaw blade. You got half a sheet, quarter sheet, eighth of a sheet. And what I do, I get a 2x4, cut notches about this wide in it at an angle, and line these up in it. Oh, just those right. So there's that one. It's almost Christmas time. So some people are doing ornaments. And here's some that are just plain ornaments, but they're cute. Instead of buying Aunt Tilda a sweater for something, you get one of these for $5, make it this here and save a lot of money. That's just the plain ones. Now, what I was going to show you, and have fun, the next step would be like this. What I'm going to show you is that on making these, with this right here in the center, tricks I learned on that. Let me set my stuff up. You can tell I'm not a very good speaker. Okay. You're going to make this. Looks difficult, but it's very easy. Just make your tube. Get a block of wood. Drill a 7mm hole. Draw what you're going to say your ornament's going to be like. When you glue it up, glue the tube only from here down. Don't glue the whole thing, just from here down. That way when you part it off, this top part comes off. Make sure it's flat here. Make sure it's flat here. This here is the most important because this is hard to reface after it's off. So you want to go to almost to the brass tube. Make sure it's flat using a small skew or whatever, parting tool. And set that to the side. Do this in here. Now, you're going to put your veneer in, which is this green bead in the edges. I'm doing this here in light color so you can see. Get a sheet of veneer. Don't cut the squares yet. Just mark it off and everything. Cut your holes, and then cut the squares out. If you try to cut the squares and then the holes, it'll split on you. Next thing is, you can see that I got arrows. That's just showing which way the grain runs. The end grain absorbs light. Side grain reflects light, makes shiny. So when you put these on here, I got 2 layers here on. Put one this way and one this way. That way they're laid like this here. You got shiny all the way around. So it absorbs it. You can't see it. Put glue on here, veneer, glue, veneer up to it. Drop that down. I always leave this here with a big hole in these. So it's sloppy. Sloppy. Because you're going to adjust it, it's this way. All you have to worry about is one side being flat. The other side doesn't have to worry about it. Put it in your press, glue it up, back to your lathe, turn it around, face, what I call it face, this side here, make it flat. This here, when you cut it off on a bandsaw, you cut it off on a table saw, whatever, you just have to worry about one side of it being square. It doesn't matter if it's thin here, thick over here, whatever. Make sure it's flat. Put your veneer on again. Put that piece on with this on top of it. Clamp it up. You're all set to go. And that's what you end up with. Now, if you want to gussy it up a little bit, you can get this. You can do these here on it. That adds a little flavor to it. That's colored toothpicks. Pieces of wood. Done with your setup. And you just keep on changing it any way you want. Add stuff to it. So like I said, you can just have it plain like that. You can have squares going around. You can have circles cut into here of veneer. Not veneer, but dowels and stuff. And make it nice. And again, it's going to cost you $6 or $7 for something like this here versus $20 or $30 for a gift. And they'll remember who gave this to you last year, next year, and next year, and next year. Okay? And I almost forgot. I did write a book on this here, how to do all these here different ones. And gives you tips, tricks, everything I learned over the last 14 years of developing these style. You get them on Amazon. I'm selling you for $20 including tax. Amazon, they're $18.50 plus shipping plus tax. And you just go on Amazon. They'll have a bar that says all. Type in books next to it. Books will come in its place. Then you type in this name here, and this will come up.
Hold on.
Oh, I was doing it for the camera. I work backwards. Oh. Still wrong? Like I say, it's been a long time making this. Just tricks and tips and methods I've used for years and developed. I had nothing to go by, so I had to come out with my own mind out of it. So it's a wonder I got this far. It even shows an old guy at work. Okay.